Do people talk about this movie anymore? Is it a cult classic? It's funny, I missed out on the usual hype of Coraline or Nightmare Before Christmas, but this one certainly caught me on the big screen. Releasing in 2006, I was the perfect age of 9 to see this fresh in cinemas. And you know, it was pretty spooky for what it was. Not too full-on traumatizing, but being in a big dark room with only this old man's face filling the frame certainly made me uncomfortable. According to reviews I found online 16 years later, Monster House was perceived as pretty alright, liked more by critics than families, but it does what it's going for. And to me, it's probably my favourite ImageMovers production. Being from this company, it's a no-brainer that the project was a good fit for their Halloween season. This company is all about motion capture footage, oftentimes with uncanny results. And the more I dig into the production details, the more interesting it gets. Obviously, you've got big names like Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg that naturally comes with the ImageMovers brand, but also Dan Harmon was part of the production at one point. But nowadays, he denounces the film, calling the director a hack and Spielberg a moron? Oof. So I wanted to revisit this film after all this time to see if my memories of it being decent were actually accurate. And you know, I think there's a real charm to it all. The house is a monster. That's the pitch. Put in some animation prowess with animating an evil house and you're good to go. It's a dynamic idea with maybe not that much longevity, I kinda thought. But then as I got into it, I came to realize how freeing it is for the production company to use stop motion for their animation work. Get out of here! For just how damn unnerving it can get. I mean, sure, this is already some pretty gross looking character design, but the way he just moves as he runs is, it could really make your skin sort of crawl. And then there's the camera. I don't know what it is about the directors at ImageMovers, but they are not afraid to really get in your face. Oftentimes gliding around the scene and getting right up close and personal to make you feel as on edge as possible against the most grating characters. Sometimes it's like you're on a slippery roller coaster track and you have no control over the brakes, so you're just being driven headfirst into the creepy factor. But what I think is quite ironically different about most of the other CGI motion capture projects from these guys is the fact that it's not as creepy looking as it could be. Across ImageMovers' relatively short filmography of this branch of films, there are 5 theatrical movies. The Polar Express, Beowulf, A Christmas Carol, and Mars Needs Moms. That is weird to say in this accent. And of course, Monster House. But whilst all of these projects had their cast physically performing in a theatre space to capture their every motions, this film took less of an emphasis on their facial performance this time around. Or at least, they certainly twisted some knobs to be less direct. When you stare at the Polar Express, Tom Hanks stares back, because he was all of the cast, and the conductor especially is molded to be his face. It was their intention that if you capture an entire actor's performance and design your animation on the likeness of that actor, you would breach into new territories of realistic CGI animation. But fast forward from this first project to their last one 7 years later and...
Is that broccoli?
No, that's vomit, but I understand the confusion.
It's still not really looking very good. And let's be honest, this is still pretty funky looking. But I would argue Monster House is the best looking of the bunch, since the animated characters look like animated characters rather than just some strangely slugly version of real people. And so the way that Monster House goes, there's a crotchety old man who warns people off of his lawn, creepy and freaky and all that, until one outburst he dies of a heart attack directly on top of our protagonist.
Stay away from her!
I'm not sure how 9-year-old me could stomach this in the dark cinemas, but he could, so go me. From there, our main character DJ is haunted by the house opposite. It always looked a little creepy. But now it's giving phone calls of nothing and taunting him. So he gets his good buddy Chowder involved with keeping an eye on the house as it slowly begins to reveal its true colors, eating people up whenever they get too close, including future preppy main character Jenny. All the while, of course, every source of authority figure is belittling the crew and disregarding them, be it evil babysitters and their boyfriend, parents who have gone away, or police officers and all. In that regard, it's kinda your classic romp as the trio of kids come to grow as a team against the odds and all that. And you're left wondering what more can they do with this slow escalation of a house monster. The whole runtime of the movie is about 1 hour and 31 minutes, which is very much an acceptable theatrical length, but it's obviously not billowing with too many concepts to play with. There are elements of padding. I barely see the point of this babysitter at all if she doesn't get any comeuppance by the end of the film, and the kids go talk to like a gamer master for advice since that's their role model to look up to. But once it gets going and we're actually within the mouth of the beast, it is quite interesting how they manage to animate and conceptualize so many anatomical elements into the rooms of a house.
Then that must be the uvula. Oh, so it's a girl house.
Though at the same time, it is mostly just this foyer and a pit beneath them. Not that I can imagine how they could use every bathroom or something as different body parts. The most interesting part anyway seems to be the limbs outside, like the trees, concrete slabs, and the grass, which the film seems to know since it uses this the most. Even still, plot-wise, it becomes apparent that the house attacks anything on its grounds unless it's either Horace Nevercracker or anyone with some form of authority is watching. It has social awareness, which briefly makes it a little more scary. And while usually that's just an unfortunate circumstance attacking indiscriminately, tonight is Halloween night, so all those trick-or-treating kids are doomed unless something can be resolved. And so that's the goal of the kids eventually, trying to take down this house. And here's your creepy reminder to subscribe if you want to see more. The movie isn't a masterpiece by any means, as it doesn't really go too in-depth on anything. How did the house handle previous Halloween nights? Why can't they just repeat whatever worked back then? Why was the house taunting DJ randomly if it only attacks people on their grounds? Etc. But for what it is, it's an enjoyable gig. Horace makes a surprise reappearance. The kids come to learn that in the basement of the house is the dead body of Horace's wife, who was accidentally killed with a fall and a slab of cement, and that's why the house is haunted. It's possessed with her soul, always fearing outsiders and those that choose to attack her after a traumatized life as a circus freak. It's an interesting direction for the plot, although I can't help but notice how empty the background looks. It kind of feels like early animation. The film actually had quite a tumultuous experience getting off of the ground and into the format we saw on the big screen. At first being a written pitch from Dan Harmon and Rob Schrab for ImageMovers, until Gil Kenan hopped on board with their own vision, based off of a pitch for an unproduced Pac-Man movie for DreamWorks. And since the top dogs at ImageMovers just wanted a director for the work as soon as possible, they popped Kenan on and were impressed by his pitch. However, come round to 2004 and the film was in turnaround, i.e. a bit of development hell trying to transition from development into pre-production, to which Sony then dropped in and began production in August. So with Kenan with most of the control over the storyline, he was free to make any changes from the Harmon and Schrab Foundation, describing the original as absolutely brilliant and laugh out loud funny, before adding the whole element of the Nevercrackers and why this house works as it does. I'd be curious to read how this original screenplay would have gone, because while there are jokes within this movie, I'm not sure I'd call all too much of it laugh out loud funny. Plus, perhaps over-explaining the monster is a little bit mystery-breaking? Who knows? Though if this original screenplay did ever appear online, perhaps it's a future video for next Halloween, unless someone else has already covered it by then. But to help with the changes of adding all these characters in, Pamela Petier was brought on, scriptwriter of Corpse Bride, and drafted together the general idea at her house from there. Obviously not ideal for the original creators, but for what it was alright. And then, for the final sequence of the night, the house goes full on the offensive, growing arms to traverse with and fighting the kids in a nearby skip, and even rebuilding itself into a truer, even more brutally beast-like form, only to eventually be taken down by a stick of dynamite down into the chimney that leads straight to the heart, exploding shards of wood in every which direction, and finally having the soul of Constance Nevercracker released and free to move on. The dialogue isn't all that perfect, and there's minimal on the side of theming, motifs, and callbacks, but it's nice. Enjoyable. It's an extra dose of whiplash when you come to learn that our protagonist DJ is actually Marcus Musso, the boy from Disney's Hannah Montana. Weird. But for what it was going for, it achieved most of its goals, I think. Starting off with a budget of $75 million and almost doubling it to $140 million. It's not the most successful production on their list, but it's not Mars Needs Mums. I still haven't gotten around to watching The Polar Express, and I hear a lot of people are really into that, but I've also seen how daunting it looks in the faces. We've all seen that one kid. So until I myth-bust my own personal biases, I think I'll look back at Monster House fondly as the best work from ImageMovers, being naturally gifted in the art of creepy. Certainly creative on the premise of the movie, and with a overall good execution. Not great, but good. Perhaps the real horror story was the fact that it was rebuilt on the foundations of a better one, potentially. But I guess we'll never know. For now, I'm ending it off here. My name's been Dazz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit.